Hello and welcome to another Daily Muppet. In today's video, we obviously have some big things to cover as it has been officially announced that Richard Arnold is set to depart from Manchester United at the end of the year and set to immediately give up control as CEO of Manchester United. We'll talk about how we get there, why this happened, and what it all means, as well as some more news as we move into the INEOS takeover of Manchester United, or at least takeover of the sporting control side of Manchester United. Okay, so obviously, big news that came out this morning was that Richard Arnold set to depart, and let's see exactly what was said here, just so I can make sure I explain it correctly. But Richard Arnold, Manchester United Football Club CEO, set to leave the club by the end of the year. Announcement will be made later today and will come shortly before Sir Jim Ratcliffe's INEOS Sport confirmed the acquisition of a 25% stake in the club. And then it was, announced as well that it would be Patrick Stewart, the club's legal counsel, senior legal counsel, who would take over as the interim CEO or acting CEO for right away. And in lieu of, looking for a new permanent CEO. Now, this was expected. If you've been following, you know that I think it's been a few months back now, saying as soon as that INEOS thing was kind of confirmed, that it was extremely likely that the CEO would be replaced as one of the first moves. And I hinted a few times at some other issues with regards to Richard Arnold, which I think is why this is being done now and not waiting for them to come in and actually be in position and in control in order to happen. And, Richard Arnold is not to blame for what's gone on at this club. He's not to blame for the state of Manchester United. No more really than Ed Woodward was. Ed Woodward had a bit more power and influence, I think. But ultimately, they were both people who served at essentially the advisement of and direction of the people in charge of them, which of course are the Glazers and primarily, the day-to-day instruction or regular instruction of Joel Glazer. So, they're just the following orders types of people that are responsible as well for, helping to work on the commercial side of the club, secure deals, things like that. And in that respect, there's nothing really particularly wrong with Richard Arnold. I think he's a nice guy from most things. I think as a human being, he's probably a decent person. So it's not, it's been tricky because I've made videos and I've talked about things and I've had to be a little bit careful because I personally don't really take any pleasure in, celebrating someone's loss of employment or their career path or something like that, even though it happens every single day. That's not really the point. The point is why this is so good is a signal of what is to come. Obviously, one of the major factors in INEOS getting in on this deal is, are they going to have the control and influence to affect positive change? Well, look at it this way. You already have, before they're even in there, the CEO gone and then ready to appoint a new CEO. These are the changes that are to be expected. And I think it starts to go a long way to prove a lot of what I've been saying about what they're going to be able to do and that they will have a lot of, really full control over the sporting aspect of the club. And that's not a small part of the club. That's it. That's the whole club, and be able to appoint a CEO that fits that. Now, there's a little bit of backstory that goes on with Richard Arnold on this whole process as well that I think is worth mentioning and is the reason why he was replaced immediately right now before the deal is actually done, and replaced with somebody who is legal counsel, who's someone they can surely rely on to be a bit of an even keel, keep things going, not rock the boat, and kind of just help with the transition during this period of power, and we'll talk about some of that in a minute. But the reason for this is this. As I understand it, there was a big fracturing in the relationship between Richard Arnold and the Glazers as far back as May. The Glazers had already accepted that to sell to Jim Ratcliffe on that 51% offer, and had voted yes. And in that board meeting, Richard Arnold voted against them. Now, other people did too, but there was more plausible reasoning for that. Patrick Stewart voted against it on the basis of concerns over a potential legal situation, as did the representatives on the board who represent the Class A minority shareholders. That makes sense. Richard Arnold didn't really have a plausible reason to vote against the deal from his perspective. And I think that it didn't make the Glazers very happy that he went against them in that situation. Following that, as I understand it, he was kept almost completely in the dark as to the entire takeover process. And very interestingly, we saw no updates for months during this period in time. And that might give you a little bit of a clue, without making any sort of accusations, as to what has been going on with the leaks. And when you did get a leak, you would get some strange leaks from people like Rio Ferdinand and others that the club was nearing a Qatari takeover. You would get articles from some people at The Sun that potentially have connections to Richard Arnold and some people, that the Qatari takeover was the one that was going to go through and was set to be done by around a certain date. These were all false. And I'm not even having a go at the people who reported them. I understand why they did. If I had gotten that information from contacts in these positions, I probably would have said the same thing. I mean, I have, just in reverse. It just so happens that I was right. It's my understanding that he was kept in the dark about the situation and was somebody who was preferring a Qatari takeover simply because there was... I don't think he got on with Jim Ratcliffe, as far as I understand it. This will probably be something that they won't admit, because I've seen sort of quite a bit of PR the other direction. But the INEOS team were not impressed at all when they showed up back in March and looked at things and went over stuff. They were not impressed. They were not impressed with decision-making processes. They were not impressed with how things were run. They were not impressed with a lot of stuff. And I think that it was clear for this whole time that their first action as they come in would be to replace the executives and the people who oversaw this whole thing. And I think that was something not wanted, and there was a bit of a fracturing here in the relationship between Arnold and the Glazers, because the Glazers have wanted the INEOS deal since April and have been figuring out with INEOS ways to move forward on it. And you saw a lot of stuff come out that didn't, that didn't really come through with regards to Qatar, where you had other people that maintained for months now that it was, in fact, the INEOS deal that was going to be done, and that they were operating under the basis of preferred bidder, as I said many times. So without getting further into that, because there's no point in it, the only reason I mention it is to explain why he would be replaced. There's not a lot of love lost, and there's not a lot of trust between INEOS, the Glazers, and Richard Arnold. And so, yeah, I don't think from any perspective it's even that he's done a bad job as far as the Glazers are concerned with United. But during this transition period, they don't want him in charge. And that's the simplicity of it. And so he's known that. He's probably going to be on his way out, and has been seeking new challenges, new employment. And that's all. But like I said, it's not about a personal vendetta or anything like that. It's simply a matter of, this is a sign of what is to come. And what is to come is Jean-Claude Blanc. And this is, I think, almost totally nailed on, that he will be the CEO of Manchester United in the future once this deal is ratified. Now, an important thing to understand here is, I know there's questions, why not immediately? Why the interim? Why all of that? As it's been stated, INEOS cannot be perceived to be having any sort of undue influence on decision-making process during. So when the deal is ratified, it'll be subject to and conditional upon approval from the on the owners and directors tests, which may in fact already be underway a little bit. I'm not actually sure, but it'll be conditional on that. They'll be put through. There's not going to be any issues there, but it does take a little bit of time. And in that period of time, where until that deal is complete, it cannot be viewed that INEOS have influence or have been making decisions on the club, because the Glazers are the ones responsible. And the Glazers are the ones who are, effectively liable for anything that occurs during this period in time. So it would be legally a problem. And so in the meantime, you have this interim CEO of Patrick Stewart, who is the legal counsel that will advise on the transitionary period, and then they will look for a new CEO following that, which is fine. And then once they move forward, and everything's complete and it's ready, then then at that point it'll be wrapped up. So, basically that's where things stand right now with Blanc. He will come in following this. I think it's pretty much nailed on that he's going to be CEO. I was just noticing, as I've said many times, that that's going to happen. I was just noticing this is a good report from someone in France about what's going to happen here. But yeah, so good. Jean-Claude Blanc will come in as CEO. You should read up on him. I said it before. Read up on Jean-Claude Blanc. He is an incredibly accomplished person. He's an incredibly accomplished person in football who has done a lot. He built up PSG to be a success during the early days of investment. He helped Juventus get back on its feet. He was not involved in the scandals and things that went on with Juventus. He was not there at that time. So he's someone who's done an enormous amount in sport that will support both the sporting and economic side of things incredibly well. And this is why I've said since the beginning, one of the reasons why I supported INEOS over a Qatari bid, outside of concerns about state-backed and things like that, which have their relevance, was that I feel that INEOS know what it takes to build a club that will be self-sufficient, and that is going to be necessary to build a powerhouse, a commercial and sporting powerhouse that can fund anything and everything it wants, and should be the most self-sufficient and most financially powerful club on its own back in the entire world. And that is, I think, where Jean-Claude Blanc comes in as someone who can do that and has done that and has the expertise to make that happen. So Jean-Claude Blanc to come in as CEO, likely with Brailsford, Ratcliffe, and Joel Glazer on that board over that. But that would be who I would expect. I'm quite positive it is happening. I would say 99% sure that he will be appointed. And it'll just be whenever it's actually firmly completed, at which point INEOS can make that decisions. So give it some time on that. With regards to the director of football, what I know about this is that, as I've mentioned before, they're gonna be trying to say this because I don't want, again, I would say that there's times here in this discussion when I'm trying to be careful because I don't want to necessarily give people, cause problems for anybody. But yeah, I don't want to cause problems for anybody. But here's the situation. It is very likely there will be a new director of football at Manchester United, okay? It's just normal. They're going to want to come in and appoint somebody who fits their project. That is likely what's going to happen. I'm not saying that Murtaugh and such are going to be necessarily sacked. maybe there's another role for them. Maybe there's another place within the club. I think Murtaugh's done really good work on certain aspects of the club, and has a place. He's an experienced person in football. At least he's qualified to be working at the job of in football, which couldn't be said for a lot of people. And I don't know exactly what's going to happen there, but there will be very, very likely a new director of football at Manchester United once it's done. I know that there's stuff out there that, they're not making decisions yet. They're going to be doing a review and all of that. They're already doing it. Like I said, they met with Joe Glazer weeks ago now to talk about these specific decisions, these specific things, these specific actions about sport, about who they're going to appoint, about who they want to bring in. Dave Brailsford's been at Carrington. There's been lots and lots of conversations about everything going on in order to put this together. That review has really already been underway. It's not like they're going to get in there and then it's going to be 100 days before they know anything. They're already reviewing everything. They're already looking at everything. They already have an enormous amount of data, and they are looking at appointing a new director of football once they get in there. At the same time, I understand not wanting to cause instability within the club by saying, yep, we're going to replace everybody. And again, they cannot technically do anything right now. So, in that respect, you're just going to have to wait and see. But they do want a new director of football. And as I hear it today, Paul Mitchell is likely to be the one still. That is my information consistently has been Paul Mitchell is likely to be the one. He's the one that's wanted. They've spoken to him. He's spoken with them. There's a lot of stuff already ongoing on this. And while INEOS cannot do anything right now, technically, they're working on a lot of stuff. They already have all this information. They can already be putting in decisions and looking at all of this. I made the comparison a while back to, I did on Twitter. There was about this lame duck era, and this is kind of what we're in right now. In the U.S., when in November there's a president elected on a vote, which will happen next year. If there's a new president in and there's a new team coming in, well, between November and January, there's this till they're actually put in place. There's this period where the old president and his people are there, and the new president is gathering his team and putting it all together, but not in there. And during this period, they're really a lame duck president. They're not going to be able to get anything done. The people who are in office can't really do anything. They'll do some little things and actions and all that, but they can't really do much, and they don't really have any influence because nobody's going to approve it. They don't have the backing of the constituents. You have the other parties to get through. Well, if you think about it like that, you have the Glazers to get through. Nobody in the club is going to be able to make any decisions that aren't run through the Glazers, but they're not going to make decisions that ultimately might affect what INEOS want to do, even if INEOS aren't there yet. They're going to be saying, let's just wait. And that new team, much like the president-elect, is what they call it, puts in his cabinet, starts appointing people, saying who he's going to have to run this, who's going to have to run that, who he's going to have to run this. It's all very big and showy and public and all that. And they start lining up their policies and the things that they're going to do. And then they get in there to run it, hit the ground running, and then they get mired in the normal stuff of politics. But the point being, essentially, that's what INEOS will be doing. They'll be putting together their cabinet, putting together their team, putting together who they want in different positions, evaluating and looking at it, and that includes the director of football. And I believe that will be Paul Mitchell. They've spoken with Edwards. They have other people they've talked to, but I still believe it will be Paul Mitchell. It's not done, but I do believe it will be Paul Mitchell. I believe that's who they want. I would say on the balance of odds, I'd put him 60-70%. Anybody else 20-30, and a very teeny chance that nothing happens, but I'm pretty positive it will. Now, what does that mean for January? Well, they're going to have time between now and then to be putting together what they want to do, evaluating the club, evaluating the team, and evaluating Ten Hag. Now, I want to clarify a point on that with regards to Ten Hag and his position. As it stands right now, he's not under immediate threat of being sacked. He's pretty stable in his position. INEOS will want to see results improve through the season. They'll want to see, with players coming back, all of that, they'll want to see results improve because they're going to have to make decisions in January on the basis of moving forward. Now, one of the advantages and one of the things that I think will be intelligent and done differently is they're not going to buy for Ten Hag in January. Understand the difference here. They're going to buy for their sporting direction. They're going to buy for what they want to do. Now, that player should hopefully fit Ten Hag's ideas. If they do move forward and buy anybody, they will get somebody that will be not manager dependent. This is one of the mistakes that United have been making for years and years. They're going to evaluate Ten Hag. Their ideal situation is over the course of the season, does things improve, and he does pretty well, and they can decide then next year if he's the right man to take them forward and if he aligns with all of the goals, ideas, strategy, and direction that they're laying out. So this season could be his interview. They do need results to improve. He's not in danger of being sacked right now, but obviously if we were to keep losing games, get knocked out of Champions League, fall off the pace in the league, then a change would have to occur, but that would be anywhere. That's just normal. In the meantime, they're obviously going to be still considering and looking at contingencies just in case, and that is included in terms of the director of football, what they might be looking at. Contingencies. Who might fit their style of play, who might do this and all of that. For now, in case things go really bad, or for later, in case after the season, after they run through it, they say, you know what, we're not sure that this is the right thing to take forward, and we're going to start fresh. I'm just giving an example of what could happen. But in the short term, I believe that Ten Hag has been assured by people as well that right now he is safe, manage the team, do what you got to do, and take things forward. And as long as they don't continue losing a bunch of games, then I think that he will last out the season. But they do want to see results improve. In January, if they were to look to buy, it will be based on this new club direction, this new club strategy. And while there's names that we've talked about before, which we'll get into in another video probably just in detail because I probably have more names, it's going to change. It's going to change. Someone like Paul Mitchell comes in, those names are going to change. Paul Mitchell has his own practically full scouting network. He's got his own expertise. He's got his own evaluations of the club, and he may have a certain direction in terms of style that he wants that it's going to take time for the club to adjust to, but he may already have things in mind. I expect this will change. So I could give you names in January. We've talked about some of them in terms of center backs. Some of them I think are going to stay, like Todibo. But in the midfield, Onana, Palacios, Yao Neves, I think is a real name. But these could all change. These could all change when Paul Mitchell comes in, or, whoever comes in, but expecting Paul Mitchell. And then, the final factor in all of this is Jadon Sancho. Not final factor, but an interesting one. Because there was a report, obviously, that and I mentioned this as well, that I thought this was something that have to be resolved. That Jim Ratcliffe's telling Ten Hag to resolve it. I don't know if it's like that, but I do believe that they have to sort something out here. There's not a lot of options for a sale for Jadon Sancho. He doesn't want to leave England, much less Europe. There's not a lot of places that will pay money for him. So you've got this asset with this player who's worth a lot of money, who has a lot of money on the books, let's say, and a lot of wages. And if you do a loan with just partial wages covered, it doesn't really free you up any space to make a purchase or to do anything. And it certainly doesn't free up enough for the quality of player you might need. It might get you some backup, something that could come in and fill some gaps like Weghorst, but that's not really what you need. At the end of the day, I think a big part of this whole situation with Sancho does come down to a lack of leadership at the club, because I believe that a lot of it could have been resolved earlier, and a lot of the issues that he's had with the club, even the dispute with Ten Hag now, date back further than Ten Hag, date back before that, and there's a lot of reasons for it. There's a lot of players who have ended up at Manchester United and been unhappy, and feel that promises have been broken, things like that. And he's not the only one, and he won't be the last one either. Well, hopefully he will be the last one, but he wouldn't be the last one if things continued the way that they've been going. So I believe that it'll be kind of a marker of how things go. whether they say, look, you got to resolve this because this is actually a quality player that would be, here's how I look at it. If you were just looking at this totally objectively, you would say the best possible scenario is Sancho and Ten Hag get on, they resolve things, he comes in and contributes as a really good player, okay? Because that opens the door for him staying or being sold later on and actually having value. The next best is that you can sell him for at least a decent value now, but that doesn't look like it's happening. The next best is that you can loan him out and save some wages, but that barely does anything for you. And the worst is that he continues rotting in the under 18s, not doing anything and completely losing value and it turning to a mess. It's almost ridiculous that it has been allowed by the current management for this to go this way. I'm not talking about Ten Hag. It's almost ridiculous that this has been allowed to happen. Because there's the authority of the manager, but there's also providing ways to address the issues that players have in a manner that doesn't undermine the manager, and that there's leadership. And when I say I think there's been a lack of leadership at United, that's a lot of what I'm talking about. There should be other channels and avenues and people who are responsible for the welfare of the players, who are responsible for ensuring that they're getting on, for ensuring that there's locker room harmony, for ensuring that there's team spirit, for ensuring that there's some kind of relationship being built at this club and there's a team. And I think that's been missing from United for a long time. And then it all gets dumped on the manager, and then they end up in these situations. So I think this will be a marker of how they decide to respond to things. And if they figure it out and get it made up, it actually doesn't undermine Ten Hag, because at the end of the day, they're two adults, and if they make up and things work out and they can play together, great. Everybody wins. And at the end of the day, all that matters is we get results. And that's what happens when you put football first and not image or feelings or all this stuff that could come first. It's not about, does the manager look strong in the press? It's about, what is the best thing for the club? And it's not about, is the asset rotting? If we sell him, it's not about worrying about, is the image that we've taken a loss on this player? No, if you have to, you have to. You just do it. You just cut ties and get it done. You don't worry about the image. You're focused on results, and that's your top priority. And that's, I think, the biggest change that we will get with INEOS coming in, is that focus on results, and that being the top priority over anything else. And so who cares about image? Who cares about PR? It's not about making the player look good, the club look good, the manager look good. It's about getting the best result. So that will be an interesting one to see how they deal with that. Either way, they could sell them. Whatever they do, I'll support it. Whatever they make happen, I will support it, because it'll be for the right reasons. So if they decide to just cut ties immediately, great. If they decide to loan him out, okay. If they decide to figure out how to get him to get on with Ten Hag, I'm good with it as well. Whatever happens is fine. So that's what I have for today. Thank you for watching this video. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn notifications on, and I will see you in the next one.